Stay informed with Pacific Mornings.
Tārofa lava. Welcome back to Pacific Mornings on 5:31 PI. The time is 35 minutes past 7. I'm your guest host, Saina Falava Sanile Chadwick. 40 years ago this week, 2 French-planted bombs ripped through the Greenpeace flagship Rainbow Warrior at Marsden Wharf, sinking the vessel and killing photographer Fernando Pereira. The attack, meant to derail protests against French nuclear testing in the Pacific, instead supercharged New Zealand's anti-nuclear movement and helped cement the country's nuclear-free stance. Now the third-generation Rainbow Warrior has sailed back into Auckland for a dawn remembrance service on Horsley Street Wharf this morning, hosted by mana whenua Ngāti Whātua Ōrākei. We're joined now by Greenpeace Aotearoa Seabed mining campaigner Juressa Lee to reflect on the legacy of the bombing and the new battles the Rainbow Warrior is waging today. Kia ora and welcome to the show, Juressa. Firstly, tell us, where are you at the moment?
Oh, kia ora nā, tēnā koe. Yes, I'm down at Horsley Street Wharf, and behind me I've got our third generation Rainbow Warrior, as you were saying. We're just in the midst of our dawn ceremony at the moment, led by Ngāti Whātua. We've had a great turnout this morning. The weather's been kind to us. It's been a bit of a somber mood, but yeah, it's necessary to take the time and remember not just the life that the bombing of the first Rainbow Warrior by the French government took, but also the journey that Greenpeace has been on, and also how our past connects to the mahi that Greenpeace does now and the mahi that lots of people and organisations and communities are doing to keep peace and to protect our environment.
Can you just paint us a picture and just tell us what you're seeing down there right now? Because it's great to have you on the ground, but for our listeners who aren't able to make it there, what are you seeing? What's the vibe? What's the mood like down there?
Yeah, as I said, it's a bit somber. The mood is a bit somber, because we are down here to remember. But I think it's also very important to take the time and remember, because I think that we are guided by the lessons that we learn in our past. And so what I hope others are feeling today, because this is certainly what I'm feeling, is that I'm finding courage. The French government bombed the Rainbow Warrior because Greenpeace was taking a strong stance against nuclear testing in the Pacific. And I think about that when I think about my role as a campaigner against seabed mining and deep sea mining in Aotearoa and throughout the Pacific, and what Greenpeace's role can do in supporting communities, Pacific communities, who are trying to fight against this latest iteration of militarism, extraction, and colonisation throughout the Pacific.
I'm interested to get your view on the generations of people who will know about the Rainbow Warrior. 40 years ago, I think of my parents, they would have been alive at the time. And then I think about the younger generation who, including myself, I'm under 40, so I wasn't alive at the time. But are you seeing this become more well known across many generations, or is it still something that maybe only older people know? Because I know for our young Pasifika people, they're very passionate about the environment. Are they aware of this? Are they strong about this? Are they passionate? Can you just give us a rundown of what that's like?
Yeah, I think that's a really important that's a really good question. And when the Rainbow Warrior was bombed, I was 4 years old, and I was actually living in Australia. So I don't have a direct connection to that or a direct memory of that event myself. And it took some time for me to learn about the bombing of the Rainbow Warrior. And even when I learned about the bombing, it took me a while to understand the gravity, what it actually means for the government of another country to come into Aotearoa and commit this terrifying act, a terrorist act, really, which resulted in the murder of somebody.
Yeah,
And these were just
do you
things
find
that
that
weren't
quite buzzy?
talked about.
Do you find that
Pardon me?
quite buzzy? Do you find it quite strange, like just surreal that it was only 40 years ago that this attack, this terrorist attack happened on our shores? Like, I wonder, like, do the young people realize 40 years ago, that's not long ago that this
No,
happened?
that's my lifetime. You know, these are things that I've only ever seen in movies. And then in my 20s, I learned, like, wow, that is a very, very significant and horrific act that's happened in my lifetime, in a time where we think that, you know, we're living in peace and harmony, and, you know, we have freedoms um, to protest and to voice our opinions when we think that there are wrongdoings being committed against, you know, communities, frontline communities, and in our case, Pacific communities.
Mm.
And, you know, I think, you know, I think young people who are absolutely engaged in issues around our climate and our environment, biodiversity loss, and now seabed mining and deep sea mining, I don't think many people in my children's generation understand or know what happened, understand the gravity of what happened, but I think that their engagement in issues now means that they, you know, there is something there for them.
Mm.
There's a history, there's a context, and there's a cautionary lesson there, I think,
Yeah, and
about this
on that
being
cautionary
just the
lesson,
latest iteration.
yeah, on that cautionary lesson, when I look at the Pacific, we are tiny, but we have big hearts. We are strong when we work together. Are you concerned at all in terms of these big superpowers, these foreign countries coming in? You talk about New Zealand 40 years ago, it was the French, right, coming to New Zealand, making this statement. And then I think about the Pacific Island nations as well. Are you concerned about the imbalance of power there, of these big countries potentially coming in and having a bigger influence on the Pacific than they should?
100%. We've got, you know, in terms of deep sea mining, for example, we've got, you know, the administrative order, the executive order from the Trump administration, where we have, you know, wannabe deep sea miners from the global north who have a different worldview, a different view of who we are in the Pacific. They call our homes barren. They say there is no one there. And they're seeking to circumvent international rules and just, you know, really quite arrogantly throw their weight around and that power, that superpower, to come into our homes and do something very, very destructive, and very much against, you know, the multilateralism and, you know, a
Talking
whole
about,
process, the whole ISA process.
yeah, to make it easier for, I guess, our listeners to understand, in your view, what's the big battle going on here? Is it the environment versus money? I know there's a phrase in the Pacific we like to say it's mana over money. But in your view, what's the real battle going on in the Pacific here? Because people are looking at the Pacific, some may look at it and go, there are plenty of resources we can use there are things we can do. We got a lot of money we can offer you because there's not a lot of money in the Pacific. But what's your take on that battle taking place at the moment?
My take is that extractive industries are short-term and destructive, and we're being peddled false solutions. Pacific people are being told that they are standing in the way of climate mitigation, that they are standing in the way of a shift away from fossil fuels. Pacific people are being told that there are many riches in the deep sea for them, but what they are unfairly being misinformed about is the lack of science, and the real dismissal of our traditional and Indigenous knowledge and our traditional and Indigenous ways of living and surviving and providing for our families. When I say the latest iteration of colonisation and militarism and extraction, what I'm talking about is this, like, hundreds of years of this way of thinking and living and being that has not served communities all around the world. And it's kind of like wanting to do the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And I know that Pacific people have done incredible things in our lifetime, and throughout the generations. We have, beginning with our navigation throughout the Pacific, and our wayfaring skills. And I know that in our kete, we can look after ourselves, and we can lead the way, we can lead the world in a change of mindsets and a change of systems and ways that we can support our communities and our families that looks generations into the future and not just right now. And
I want to talk about
that's my
right now, though, in this point in time. If I'm a Pacific person living in the Pacific, should I be worried?
I think we should definitely be worried about the idea of turning what we would call taonga into a resource. When we look at what's in the ocean and what wannabe deep sea miners want to take out of the ocean, they've taken millions of years to form, and this emerging industry seeks to get them all out of there as quickly as possible, and we just don't know what that impact is truly going to be on us as Pacific people, on our ability to eat our traditional diets, our sovereign diets, on our ability to support our families and communities in the ways that we have been for many, many years and generations, fisheries and tourism and things like that. We just don't know. And we know like a tiny little fraction of what happens in the deep sea. But what we do know is that it supports us, and it supports all life on Earth. And that is what we should be worried about. We should be worried about interrupting the way our ocean operates, and the way it supports our lives and our livelihoods.
Kia ora. Appreciate your time, Juressa Lee. Thank you for coming on the show this morning, particularly joining us live from Marsden Point there as well. Thank you so much.
Ngā mihi, thank you.
Kia ora.